Hello viewers. In this session, I shall discuss module 49 that deals with balance of payments. First, we try to understand the concept of balance of payments. What does it mean? The definition of balance of payment is like that. It is a systematic record of all economic transactions between the residents of a country and the residents of other countries of the rest of the world during a given period of time, usually a year. The transactions recorded in balance of payments, in short BOP, include those transactions that are undertaken by the government of the country under consideration and also by the private economic agents like exporters, importers, asset traders, etc. The values in BOP are usually expressed in terms of the currency of the country under consideration and also in terms of an internationally accepted currency. For example, in India, the BOP record as published by Reserve Bank of India is expressed in Indian rupees and also in US dollar. A country transacts with other countries in respect of four items. They are visible trade, invisible trade, unrequited transfers, and capital transfers. I shall explain all these items later on. We like to know what is the use of balance of payment. Why we need to keep the record of this balance of payment. BOP record gives information about the external position of the concerned country. Considering the BOP record, government of any country formulates its fiscal, monetary, and trade policies. Moreover, banks, firms, and individuals who are directly or indirectly involved with international trade and finance, they also depend on BOP record. What are the features of BOP record? BOP record is kept by double entry bookkeeping system. There are two sides of BOP record. One is credit side and another one is debit side. In credit side, all those transactions that involve the receipts from abroad are recorded. And in debit side, all those transactions that involve making payments to foreign countries are recorded. Now, what are the constituents of BOP? On the basis of the nature of transactions, the BOP account is classified into two parts. One is current account and another one is capital account. The transactions that do not give rise to any future claims, they are considered under current account, whereas the transactions that give rise to future claims, they are considered under capital account. Now, entries in BOP account can be explained with the help of this table. There are two sides of the table, credit side and debit side. As I mentioned, all the transactions that involve receipts from abroad are recorded in credit side, and all transactions that involve making payments to foreign countries are recorded in debit side. The first item in credit side is export of goods, whereas the first item in debit side is import of goods. The second item in credit side is export of services, whereas the second item in debit side is import of services. Here, services like banking, insurance, transportation, human services, etc. all are considered. The third item in credit side is unrequited receipts. The examples of these are remittances of income by the domestic citizens working abroad, or income from assets held abroad by the domestic citizens, then war compensation received by the domestic country under consideration, etc. Similarly, the third item in debit side is unrequited payments. Examples may be given for this as interest payment on external loan, or on assets of domestic assets held by the foreigners or foreign citizens, then remittances of income by the foreign citizens working within the domestic economy, etc. The fourth item in credit side is capital inflows. Capital inflows consist of loan from foreigners, investment in domestic country by foreigners, purchase of domestic assets by foreigners. Here, foreigners means foreign individuals, foreign governments, foreign private firms, or financial institutions. And assets implies both real and financial assets. In debit side, the fourth item is capital outflows. Similarly, capital outflows consist of loan provided to foreigners, investment by domestic residents in foreign countries, and purchase of assets from abroad, etc. Exports and imports of goods between countries are considered as visible trade, and the net receipts from visible trade constitute balance of trade. If, for a country, the value of exports of goods to foreign countries is greater than the value of imports, then there will be surplus in the trade account, or in short, it is called surplus trade. On the other hand, if the value of exports is less than the value of imports for a country, then it is said that the country experiences trade deficit. Next, exports and imports of services between countries are considered as invisible trade. The third item in both credit and debit sides are unrequited transactions. Now, unrequited transactions in BOP are those receipts for which there are no corresponding payments, and those payments for which there are no corresponding receipts. These transactions are unilateral transfers as they do not involve any exchange. The first three items in credit side and the first three items in the debit side constitute the current account of the BOP. In other words, the difference between the sum of first three items in credit side and the sum of first three items in debit side is called the balance of current account. Next, we consider capital account of BOP. Capital account of BOP consists of capital inflows and capital outflows on credit and debit sides of BOP account. So, balance of capital account is the difference between capital inflows and capital outflows for a country during a given period of time. Now, balance of payments of a country consists of these two accounts, current account and capital account. It is to be noted here that balance of current account includes balance of trade. From this table, once again, we try to understand the constituents of BOP. From this table, we can understand that the first two items from both credit and debit sides, we get balance of trade. That is, balance of trade is the difference between export of goods and import of goods. Then, from the first three items, from both credit and debit sides, we get current balance of current account. Now, the items that are considered under current account in credit side are export of goods, export of services, and unrequited receipts. Whereas from debit side, the items that are considered in current account are import of goods, import of services, and unrequited payments. From here it is clear that balance of trade is included in the balance of current account. Next, there is balance of capital account. Now, capital account consists of the fourth item in credit side and also the fourth item in debit side. In other words, the difference between the fourth item of credit side and the fourth item of debit side is capital account of BOP. That is the difference between capital inflows and capital outflows. In this respect, capital inflows and outflows, we can mention here that there are two types of capital flows during a given period of time. They are autonomous capital flows and accommodating capital flows. What do we mean by autonomous capital flows? Capital flows when occur independent of the current account position of the country, then that is considered as autonomous capital flows. It is clear that autonomous capital flows are planned before the actual BOP position is known. So, it is ex ante in nature. What are the examples of autonomous capital flows? Suppose a country receiving loans from some foreign countries or from some foreign companies for a particular project. That is considered as autonomous capital inflow. Again, if a foreign firm invests in a particular firm in the domestic economy, then that will be considered as autonomous capital inflows. Again, if financial investment is done by foreigners in home country, then that will be considered as autonomous capital inflow. So they are planned investments or advances of loans by the foreign individuals or by foreign countries or by any foreign firms. And these capital flows do not depend on deficit or surplus in the current account of the BOP. Similar capital outflows may occur from the country. That means if a country advances loans to any foreign country, or if a domestic firm invests in foreign companies, then that will be autonomous capital outflow. Next, what is accommodating capital flows? Accommodating capital flows are those capital movements which occur to adjust the current account position of the BOP. So, the nature of such capital flows depend on the exact position of the current account of BOP, whether there is surplus or deficit in the current account of BOP, and the magnitude of such capital flow will depend on the magnitude of such surplus or deficit in current account of BOP. So, accommodating capital flows depend on the current account of BOP. Therefore, it is ex post in nature. From the concept of current account, it is clear that the sum of the items from debit side and the sum of the items from credit side may not be equal. There may remain deficit or surplus. Now, if there exists deficit in current account of BOP, then capital inflows in the form of loans from foreigners or investments by foreigners is done to adjust the deficit in current account of BOP. Similarly, if there is a surplus in current account, there will be capital outflows in the form of loans provided to foreigners or investments in foreign countries. So, such capital movements are dependent on current account position, actual current account position of the BOP. Next, what is meant by balance in BOP account then? It is clear from the concept of accommodating capital flows, BOP always balances in accounting sense but not in real sense. When there is a deficit in current account in BOP, this deficit will be balanced by accommodating capital inflows of the same magnitude. On the other hand, if there is a surplus in the current account of the BOP, that surplus will be accommodated by accommodating capital outflows of the same magnitude. Therefore, if current account and capital account of the BOP are considered together, then BOP always remains in balance, though there may be deficit or surplus in the current account. Existence of deficit in current account may be accommodated by accommodating capital inflows in short run, but continuation of such deficit in current account for a long period of time may create fundamental disequilibrium in BOP. Now, how can the existence of disequilibrium in BOP can be realized? There are some indicators of such fundamental disequilibrium in BOP. If foreign exchange reserves of the country fall continuously year after year, then that may be an indicator of existence of disequilibrium in BOP. If the exchange rate of the country's currency in terms of foreign currencies deteriorate, then that may be due to disequilibrium in BOP. Furthermore, in the presence of disequilibrium in BOP, foreign loan will increase for the country over time. There are some reasons for such disequilibrium in BOP. The major items in BOP are export and import of goods. So, if there exists deficit in balance of trade for a long period of time, usually that creates disequilibrium in BOP. Secondly, if an inflationary process continues in the economy owing to increase in money supply, that may create fundamental disequilibrium in BOP. Under inflationary process, prices of the exportables will increase in the country, whereas prices of importables will appear as cheaper. Therefore, exports will fall and imports will rise, causing disequilibrium in BOP. For this reason, sometimes it is called BOP disequilibrium is monetary in nature, as inflationary process and disequilibrium in BOP continue simultaneously. Thirdly, if the rates of interest on loans are higher in foreign countries than those in domestic economy, or if the returns on shares of foreign companies are higher than those of domestic companies, then there will be outflows of capital from the domestic economy, and this may cause fundamental disequilibrium in BOP. Next, structural changes in one country may cause disequilibrium of BOP for other country. If structural change occurs in a developing economy in the form of industrial development, then demand for import of industrial goods by these countries will fall. Now, these industrial goods are mainly exported by the industrially developed countries. So, due to structural transformation in the form of industrial development in developing countries, exports of developed countries will fall, and this may generate disequilibrium in BOP of the developed countries. So, it is clear that real monetary, financial, structural causes are there behind the creation of fundamental disequilibrium in BOP. Now, what are the policies to eradicate this disequilibrium in BOP? Mainly, there are two types of policies that are undertaken by the government of any country to eradicate disequilibrium in BOP. They are expenditure reducing policy and expenditure switching policy. Under expenditure reducing policy measures, the intention of the government is to reduce the volume of private expenditures, because from the Keynesian macroeconomic condition, we can develop that the level of BOP is equal to the difference between national income and private expenditures. So if private expenditure falls, then BOP position will improve. Now, the government may implement several policies to reduce the level of private expenditures. It may use monetary instruments to reduce private expenditures. Policies like reduction in money supply, increase in bank rate or discount rate, or open market sales of government securities, or increase in variable reserve ratios, etc. These are examples of monetary policies. Secondly, the government can use fiscal instruments to reduce the volume of private expenditures. That is considered as fiscal policy of the government. Policies like reduction in government expenditure, increase the rate of existing tax, or introducing new taxes. These are examples of fiscal policies under expenditure reducing policy measures. Thirdly, government can directly control the level of private expenditures by controlling wages, salaries, or profits of private individuals. Next, expenditure switching policy. Expenditure switching policy is actually devaluation of country's domestic currency in terms of foreign currencies. When devaluation is done by the government of any country, then prices of the country's exportables in terms of foreign currencies will fall and prices of country's importables in terms of domestic currency will rise. Therefore, exports will rise and imports will fall due to devaluation. And this may cause improvement in BOP. But the effectiveness of devaluation on BOP will depend on the price elasticities of demand for importables and exportables in foreign countries and in domestic country respectively. According to Marshall and Lerner, if the sum of the price elasticity of demand for importables in domestic country and the price elasticity of demand for exportables in foreign country is greater than 1, then only devaluation will be successful in improving the position of BOP. This approach is known as elasticity approach, and this condition is famously known as Marshall-Lerner condition. The traditional elasticity approach considers only the price effects of devaluation and it ignores the income effect. It concentrates only on the price elasticities of demand. But when demand for exports increases in domestic economy, the production of increased exportables occurs within the domestic economy and therefore national income increases. Due to this rise in national income, imports may rise and that may worsen the BOP position of the country in turn. Now, this effect of increase in income on BOP position is not considered in elasticity approach. So, this approach is considered as partial in nature. A more general approach to the analysis of devaluation on the BOP position of the country is developed by Professor Alexander, and that is known as absorption approach. Absorption approach considers both price effect and income effect of devaluation. Moreover, absorption approach considers different effects of devaluation in two situations, less than full employment and full employment situations. Therefore, absorption approach is considered as more general approach, where elasticity approach is considered as partial in terms of analysis of devaluation on BOP position of the economy. Thank you.